It's late at night. I got a frantic call from my wife that she drove into water and she heard ka-thunk, ka-thunk. So, worst fear, I lost the engine. As you can see, I have the car now. I've gone to rescue my wife, so I no longer am quite that afraid. What appears to have happened that I've corrected so far is that there is a well of water, well that the fuel injectors go into. I call it a well because in the past when I've had fuel injectors leak, it's filled that area up and it's made the engine have too much fuel to run. No matter how good the fuel injectors are and how good the fuel rail setup is, if there is fluid in that area, it will reside there until it evaporates and cause running issues. So I think water, so I probably have a slight vacuum leak from it, even though it doesn't show up in fuel trims. Water slowly seeped in along with the fuel and was making the engine run terrible. So I got a bunch of rags. These old things from my job over a year ago, I still have them. I've soaked up fuel with them so many times and just let it evaporate over and over. This time it was for water. So they're almost dry again. I got a bunch of them. Can't believe I still have some of these wipes left after I wiped off my keyboard every day. I reused it for automotive. So I apologize if I look as dark and dour as the Sith, but I was really terrified for my engine. My wife was not in an unsafe place, but we were worried that we lost our only legal vehicle left at the moment. And right now I'm going to see if I lost an injector, because it's not quite running right. Though there's this sort of a tick when I was first going, so maybe I need to change the oil if it's been contaminated with too much water. There was a tick in the engine that went away as I drove home, but it still wasn't running even, so I'm going to apply Fast Tech and see what's going on. Car problems got your head in the sand?
Be triumphant. You have a champion to help you. Huzzah!
Welcome to the D.E. Nichols channel. AutoBravado.com. A bit sunnier now. I'm sorry, but I had to tell the story properly about how miserable I was with what happened, because the worst case scenario was a hydrolock. Let me show you why I didn't think that would have happened. Though water is certainly still getting into the engine. If you haven't watched my short ram air intake video, well, I should have called it that. I called it a cold air intake, because that's how I think of it, even though I have a lovely short ram by Weapon R. I have a wonderful hydrolocking system. Not. Anyone who sees this probably thinks he's going to hydrolock his engine. Ah! Well, that water, yeah, water right now, comes up through here and stops at these rags. I also have another source of water, I mean air, for the engine. But basically, this collects cold air from two places outside. Yeah, soon it might be warm enough that I can undo this, but for now, this just blows cold air at this and keeps my hot air intake from being too bad of a short ram. Here's my trusty rags drawing again on my intake. And what I observed first when I got under the hood was that inside of this well was just a whole lot of wetness. Now, personally, I'm thinking it'd be a wonderful idea if there was enough metal left over somewhere in the design to drain this, those pools off, but the way the intake sits, the way it needs to seal, and how important that is to seal very well, I don't think that's possible. So, Brian's Mobile 1, I'm sorry, but for a change, I don't think that's an idiot hood. Lost the idiot hood, okay? But I now think it has a purpose, because it could actually overshadow over the fuel injector rail. So if water somehow managed to go crazy hard up through the front of the engine, then you would have water that couldn't splash up and over there and create issues. Now, considering how I'm talking about water coming from the front of the car, the idiot hood would still capture that. You would just have to remove more to discover the issue. But there's a couple other reasons why the idiot hood might have a purpose, other than being a problem where I used to live where it was really dry and hot. Now it's wet and hot. The wiring over time, I've observed on a customer's cars that their wiring is more protected. I'm starting to get a little bit of fraying and damage on this wiring, and I don't think it's a clip-in. I think it's all literally wire straight to the PCM with no connections. Yeah, because this ties into the main hub. So literally, if I were to do this, that would be a lot of splicing. So we really need to protect these wires, because I'd hate to have to get a whole new wiring set or harness or harvest it and move it. And look, those crazy buggers, every time I look at it, how I look at it is there's a whole bunch of wires that look exactly the same. When I dig in here, it's more like every 2 wires are the same. Well, anyway, I'm being overly curious about that. That's probably not the problem. Obviously, I have a little kink in my PVC, but enough gets through that it doesn't matter. It still does its purpose. Alright, so we had a lot of wetness down in here. Now we need to establish if we have fuel from each of these, or if we're missing spark. I do see some damage on the wires here that I didn't notice before. The other thing I noticed is I have no idea why. I could swear I didn't leave it this way, but you never know. Yeah, that sucker really doesn't want to stay on. I gladly had some dielectric grease and pushed that hard core in, just like I did up here. It might kind of drain off and it might not work, but some silicone might work better. But my power steering sensor switch was unplugged. Car didn't really care about it, but you know, that's what was going on there. And by the way, the big nasty exhaust rattle from that plate at the bottom, my buddy found a nut for me at work. He was training on me and making me a smarter tech, and he gave me a gift of finding that bolt real easy and quick. So that got rid of most of my exhaust rattle, and there's just a little bit left at certain RPMs because this is mostly rusted together, but eventually I'll finish getting rid of the original exhaust leak. So things have gotten a lot drier. I still just see a little bit of wet in here. I have P0300 or a pending code for misfire. Things aren't quite running right, so let's start things up and see how they are. I'm listening to how each cylinder sounds so I can see where spark is missing. Okay, torque gun has too many wiggles in it. tell you, the sound is coming from nowhere in particular, so I don't know what to think. Oh, this is wiggling. That's something I can work on. You know, when I do water decarbonization, one of the warnings I have is that it can throw off spark plug gap, so I'm going to check spark plug gap next. Well, it looks like I have a hard code now, so let's see if that's still P0302, but it feels like I'm getting pre-ignition, so I feel like it's probably a spark plug gap that is way too tight, so it's going off early. Because when your gap is larger, the field strength builds, I think it's in the secondary coil, it builds more before it actually fires, and when you have a lower resistance, it'll fire too soon, it'll be weak, it'll be off time. A lot of Chevys with awesome modifications sound like this all the time because their sparks happen a little too soon, and it sounds like crap. So yeah, I'm saying Chevy owners, don't buy fancy extra better spark plug wires. Makes your trucks sound like crap. I've actually tried to gap some of them a little bit wider, see if it would help, but there was just so much power going there with the modifications that there was no help in it. It was just screwed up. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it on that one. I'm sorry. Talking about Chevy trucks. Okay, so now I have a hard cord for General Misfire P0300. Basically what that means to me is it doesn't know what the futz is going on. Sorry, I swear a lot at work. I resisted. Being good. So there's a general misfire, and oftentimes one messed up spark plug can mess things up so much that, you know, since it fired early, it kind of looks like it's to blame somewhere else. The computer has a hard time figuring out where the problem is if it's wacky enough. At least that's my opinion frequently on this dear old Chevy Prizm. So as you could tell in the earlier scene, or I can show it now that after in editing, is I put a heavy metal tool up and listened to each spark, and it all sounded normal. I listened to all the fuel injectors and they all popped normal. I know that's not quite definitive, but that is a way of saying, well, we're running, so I know we have fuel. Timing could be off, unlikely physically, likely by spark plug gap, or insufficient fuel from the fuel injector getting shot. I don't know. If I don't find anything wrong with spark plugs, I'm going to be replacing fuel injectors. I have an extra set on hand, including the sills, because you always destroy sills when you set up this silly fuel injector rail, always. Because you have to have it tight enough for it not to leak, and having it that tight also usually ruins the seal. Ugh. A lot of other Toyota owners know how I feel. Here's just a little wrenching. 1 and 3. Don't quote me on this. This is 1 and 3. I have no idea. I never remember what cylinder is what. But 1 and 3 I had to increase to a 7x1 with how much I changed spark plugs. So much so that I was falling asleep once and stripped one a little. Yeah, I changed spark plugs that much that I've actually was falling asleep during the job. That's how boring wrenching can be. Sorry, that's more to play along with Shorter's box than anything else. But this is why you shouldn't work on your car when you're supposed to be asleep or getting ready for bed. Ah! Play to the masses just a bit. You can undo every single one of these and wear them out. Or you can do it my favorite way, at least on my car, where I undo these 2 wires Oh, they're not quite wires. You need a deep one on that. There's two 10mm nuts back there. Hey, I found another reason to use these wobblers. Gives you just that little bit more clearance when you have it in wobble mode. To get to this nut, since Craftsman's are extra short, which is actually handy sometimes when you're after a 10. See, straight, couldn't get over it, versus wobble mode. I've been in the rain. Rains a lot here. And these are the standard smaller type of spark plug socket tool would work. Or suffer like me and have the wrong tool for it and use a 1/2 inch on it because you bought the wrong one at AutoZone for your home set. Oh my gosh, I should have been filming. When I pulled this out, it was just this cylinder is just filled with water. Totally just water. So if I didn't hydrolock my engine and drove home with a cylinder full of water, this Toyota is bloody amazing. 3/8 is my favorite, but I tell you, this Duralast 1/2 inch ain't bad. I mean, you don't have to fish for it. It like somehow just keeps it in there. I'm not sure if it's a magnet or what, but you don't have to fish. It saves you a step. My brother-in-law's old wrench even unfroze a little bit for me. It ratchets is for the first time that I've picked it up out of desperation. So this isn't bad. This is pretty cool. That water's concerning, of course. But you know, what I'm doing is I'm taking all the spark plugs out. That was my 4th and final one. And their gaps might be a little off, but I don't know if I even have a gapper here at home. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the fuel pump by unplugging the fuse, and I'm going to go ahead and make some noise and spit this water out. That's the plan. It's a good one if I say so myself, to unplug the engine. Let's see, which one is fuel? I remember it's a 15 amp. I've burned it out before when doing compression tests, so I know I don't want to do that. Fuel, fuel, fuel. I bet this is it right here. EFI or heater. Let's see. Yeah, that wiring I always forget is in the way there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull both 15s. It'd be fun to have a troll on this one. You're using a too powerful tool. You can't do that. Watch me. Even powerful tools can be used gently by gentle giants. Alright, that way I don't blow a fuse, and you get to watch it all spit out, unlike me. Apparently you can't disable both 15s. Let's take another look at this. 15 amp dome, left that alone. EFI or heater. I really think the AM2 is for fuel. I really do. So I'm going to restore the other one. have a pretty good memory, so I'm going to trust myself on this one. Or not. Let's try it the other way. We're disabling EFI instead of AM2. As long as I don't do a compression test, I won't ruin the fuel pump when it has nothing to fire with. Well, that seemed less dramatic than I thought it would be. Let's take a look in there. Dry as a bone, extremely carboned. Dry and extremely carboned. I wonder if the water was just in the spark plug well. It may not have been in combustion at all, and even if it did, just a little bit here, it's just like water decarbonization on my engine. This would be a great time for a borescope. It's fixed. The boots were just wet. Let's take a look. Dry. Lost a rubber seal. No, I didn't. Dry. This rubber seal did fall on my exhaust. Dry. Knocked off to the side, but dry. So I just need to grab a couple of picks and straighten those up a bit. As always, I believe this is a view into combustion. 42 degrees, 39, 43, 44. So basically what I think happened is my valve train is done. I think that's what